everybody. Welcome to another episode of Radiorama. And today we have a Philco console that someone dropped off, and yes, the guts are not with it. It's a model number 37-640, which means it's a 1937 model. And the people that brought it by, this was apparently their father's, well, the husband side of the couple that brought this in said that it was his dad's in the Midwest, and that what he did was he wired up a bunch of radios in the house or whatever to a central sound system, including this one. And one of the first things I noticed was that this is missing the output transformer. It's missing the output transformer, and also this would have been a field coil speaker, meaning a powered speaker having B plus going to it to energize the electromagnetic field coil. Now, the fact that it's missing isn't the end of the world. You can replace a field coil speaker with a permanent magnet speaker as long as you compensate for what the field coil took, which is probably about 1,000 ohms, 10 or 15 watts. This is the chassis, and it too has unfortunately been messed with quite a bit, and a bunch of weird things been done to it, of which I really don't understand. First of all, it's been hacked. They've got all these wires coming out the back, which are coming off these coils, which makes me think, actually, it's coming off of the band switch in the back. There's a wafer switch. There's 3 sections, and we've got a line here. Now, that's coming off the volume control. This is the volume control right here, this long shaft going all the way back here. These two are going to the band switch. Now, if it's just like police band and one of the shortwave bands, maybe that's not such a big deal, because honestly, there's not much to listen to on shortwave and nothing on police band. The other thing that's going on here that I find puzzling is we've got a second volume pot installed here. Or not a volume pot, but another pot installed here, and it's in pieces. I think this might be the on-off switch, and they've, for some reason, installed this very strange pot here. I don't feel comfortable with that. That's going to have to be replaced. Otherwise, it's not been restored. We have all the original nasty old paper capacitors in there, all these guys. And just like a lot of good old-fashioned Philco radios, some of the stuff in here is pretty difficult to get at. Like, this is the underside of one of the wet electrolytics mounted up top, and there's another one here. I'm going to guess that if they said that he did this in the 50s and 60s, so the set's been out of actual operation for decades. And let's see here, we have 1, 2, 3 electrolytic cans mounted up top. And this is another one of those strange sets where the rectifier is on top of the power transformer, and we have this one here, 5AR4. Now, I'm not familiar with my cross references here. That's supposed to be a 5Y4. If that's the wrong rectifier and it's been put in there and run, that could have really potentially damaged that transformer. And unfortunately, it's not a typical transformer you can just stick another one in, because it has to have the socket installed, because there's not enough room on this chassis for the rectifier. I'm looking here too. This says 6F6 with a short. That's really not good. And then you have this one says fair, but it looks like the tops, and I'm not a tube specialist, but the tops of these three have, it looks like, pretty severe burn marks above the heaters, like intense burn marks on the glass envelope. That doesn't mean anything, but it's just, this looks not normal, like it looks burnt. So that makes me wonder if the set was ever turned on and left on um, without the field coil in place, meaning there was perhaps a time period where this set had a lot of B plus with nowhere to put it. This is the shadow meter that came with these. They're also called flutter meters. And it was kind of a pre-iTube way of showing how close your stations would tune in. There's a little tiny little shutter in there that beats like a million miles an hour. Probably if it can be made to work, it'll probably be a rather sensitive set. You've got 3 gangs on the tuning condenser. And how many tubes do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 tubes. That's decent. That's just a few more than your typical AA5. But again, we've got a 3-gang condenser. So with a decent sized antenna, this would probably be rather sensitive. Another thing I'm seeing that I'm not wild about that may or may not cause a problem is this. The tuning condenser is supposed to kind of float, and the rubber that caused it to float is no longer rubber. It's turned into some other material. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to see if this is compatible, because I really hope that was not run in there and it's the wrong tube. All right, online surveys, and I went to a lot of the, for some reason I found a lot of the answers on the audio file boards, and no offense, man, but sometimes you go to the audio file boards and those people don't know what they're talking about when it comes to electronics. But this probably would be okay, but I'm not going to include it when it goes back to the customer. It's going to have the right rectifier in there, because depending on what you read, the current requirement for this tube is a little bit more than a 5Y3, so it's not the end of the world. It's probably okay, but it needs to be replaced anyway. I hope I have a 5Y3 in my collection. If not, I think a 5U4 will fit just fine. Yeah, I happen to luckily have a 5Y4 in my stash. It's not the most common rectifier. I'm not sure how long they made it. Luckily it tests bare minimum. I can replace it later, and it's got no shorts. Now I'm curious about something. I'm curious. Just curious about this guy. Maybe I should test it. I understand it says in USA FD, in England KBS, Sylvania. The top of that really looks nasty. Look at that. It looks burnt. All right, I'm going to test it just because I'm curious. It's dead. It is completely gone. That base is getting hot though, so it's weird. It's not registering anything. I think something really horrible is happening with that. That makes me concerned. That makes me worried about the health of that transformer. So I think before I get carried away, I might just bring it up temporarily to see if there's anything happening, like is the transformer distributing different voltages to different parts of the set. Because if it's not, I don't know, might have to make a unfortunate phone call to the owners and tell them they need a new transformer, and whether or not they're willing to engage with that kind of possibility, because I would need to find another Philco or a Philco transformer that has the correct socket mounted for the correct tube with the correct wiring, which is going to be a challenge. And now that I'm looking at this a little more closely, I've realized that for whatever reason, just random tubes have been stuck in sockets. This says a 6SN7. There's no way that's a 6SN7. There's no way that that's whatever that is. There's no way that that's whatever it is, because what it wants is the grid cap on the top, and none of these have grid caps. They're not the right tubes. So I'm not sure if maybe just someone stuck it in there to look pretty or what, but those are, I would not fire this up. You could cause all kinds of problems. Okay, so I've turned it on, and I'm going to give it just a few volts, maybe 30 volts, because I don't want to damage anything in here if I can help it. What I'm going to do is look for just basic stuff, like does it have, sorry, well, I set up my multimeter here, does it have any B+? That is a negatory. Let me check my switch here. See if at least I'm getting AC. Well, I'm not sure if it's actually on or not. Let me do some checking around. Okay, the good news is that, and I'm only up part of the way, I've got about 2.5 volts on filament for the output tube. One of the output tubes, that means probably part of the filament string is good. I'm not sure how to check the rectifier because, again, it's way up there, buried in there. But I'm also going to check my B+, see how my B+ is doing. That'd be other. There's a little bit of DC on there. I mean, it's probably not going to kick on that much because I don't have much juice going through it. Likewise, we've got B+ there. So that's good. Where else is there a cap? It's buried under that jury-rigged thing there. Let's see, I think that goes... I can't tell what I'm doing under here. Let's see. Can I get under there? That's a problem with this wire. It just, all the colors that it might have had have faded a long time ago, so you're looking at a bunch of similar colored wiring. But I think we're okay here. Let's see if there's... I was about to say, can I see any glowing on the rectifier? Probably not, because they don't glow that much even when they're powered up all the way. I'm going to turn this off. I think I can probably at least proceed with doing some basics. Can't do much right now. I don't have an output transformer. Not here at the house. I'd probably have some over at the museum, but I would need to do some serious digging because right now I don't even know if it'll make a noise. I have no way of knowing. I guess if I was smart, I could jerry-rig something up, but I don't want to do that because this is not my radio. In the meantime, I'm going to start downloading and looking at some schematics. I think I can figure out this, untangled mess of stuff here. Meanwhile, what I did do is I dug through all my tubes, and I now have the correct tubes in the correct sockets. I didn't have all glass. I had a couple metal tubes, probably from the factory, that came with more of these Coke bottle style tubes. It's also missing all the shields, so this would have had a shield here, here, and here. These little things here were the spring-loaded spring clips that would have held those in, so we'll need to find those. This right here will need to be replaced. That's your pilot light, and if you short that out, that can do a great job of shorting that out too. So, at least it's a start. Well, I decided, even though I can't, test it out as far as how it sounds, I feel confident enough that this is okay to where I can at least do the things that I know will have to be done. And as you know from watching my videos, the most common application of my time when it comes to working on these is replacing capacitors. Yay! And I would not trust any of the capacitors that are in anything this old. And this radio is very close to being over 90 years old. And I mean, if you had a 100-year-old car, you probably wouldn't be running it on all the original components either. So likewise with this radio, a lot of stuff needs to get replaced before I would even trust really bringing it up to try. All right, just a little word of warning about some sets like these when you run into them. A lot of people, when they work on a set with a power transformer, they just go into automatic mode and thinking, oh, well, it's a transformer set, so that must mean that all the electrolytics inside go to the chassis, so I can just snip, snip, snip away and run my negatives to wherever convenient for me on the chassis. But if you did that on this radio, you'd probably be really sorry, because there's 3 electrolytic capacitors in here. There's this one that's kind of like in this little hidey hole here. There's one here, and there's one hiding underneath this jury-rigged thing. And that one is in fact chassis ground. That one goes to the metal. So you could do whatever you want on that one. It looks like it will be easy because it's got just one lead going to it. So I'll snip that off of there and probably attach the negative of the electrolytic, the new one here or there. But these two are floating. And what I mean by that is their ground goes somewhere else. And not the chassis, because this has this cardboard sleeve here. And this one, it's really easy to miss on this one. This one, on the other hand, has a wafer disc. And you'll notice that there are, I think, probably a positive, maybe two positives, and then a negative, which is the black wire. And the black wire goes to the body of this electrolytic, which is in that cardboard sleeve. So it tells me right away that the ground is shared between these 2 or 3 capacitors right there, and the ground itself actually goes into this wire here that then feeds, looks like it feeds out into probably the output transformer. So that is probably B minus. So that would make a lot of sense. You wouldn't want to, if you tried to ground this on chassis, it would buzz like crazy. So those two need to be floating grounded here. And then this one, of course, can go to the chassis. And then otherwise, a lot of these paper capacitors will have the values just kind of stamped on them. Sometimes they're hard to read, and sometimes it's hard to film. But sometimes you just twist them around and it'll show you. 0.05 microfarads, you see that? And the voltage will usually be written underneath. It's going to be like 200 or 300 volts. But I replace everything with the same value, thereabouts, and then 630 volt rated for everything, unless it's critical. Like some of these will have more than 630, like your across the line caps will need to be minimum 250 AC, 1000 DC rated, and it needs to be a different kind of capacitor. Zenith seems like they must have been kissing cousins to Philips on some of their 30s radios, because they just crammed these things full. And it's just a huge mess, and some things are really buried down in here like this thing. But I'm going to start the recapping process. I looked at the schematic, which luckily there's a good clean one. Everything in here is like 10, 12, I think there's 116 microfarad cap. I think I'm just going to replace everything with 10 microfarad capacitors. It's not that critical, especially not in these 30 sets. And I really want to know what's going on with this thing, which has also been added. Well, I'm partially through recapping this. I just found something I think was kind of amusing, actually, and I think it's interesting. So, remember I was kind of like wondering what was going on with this pot here? Well, I finally looked at it a little bit more closely. I'm trying to see if I can get this on camera where it makes sense. So, I'll try to describe. None of the lugs coming off the pot are attached to anything. And the only wires that are connected are the 2 switch wires. So what I'm gathering here is the repair person, or maybe this person's father, said, well, I want to put a switch there, and maybe put the tone control back here. Or maybe this failed at some point and this was a solution. And I would bet that's absolutely the case right there. I think this is... No, wait a minute. No, yeah, I think this is tone, because this is volume. So what I need to do is find whatever the value is of this, whatever it came with the set, or at least find something approximate. Because I think what might have happened is that the original switch, which was probably, I don't know, on, off, and maybe a couple clicks for tone, I think that might have broken at some point, or maybe had a failure, or maybe there was some sort of other elaborate sound system throughout the house, and he took the tone control out, he maybe moved it here, I don't know. Be curious to know, but probably we'll never find out. But I don't know. It's kind of ingenious. If you look at it, they made it the same length by basically kind of soldering the leads off the back plate of this somehow. I mean, it's a little wobbly, but it works. And here we have this held on with one of those knurled thumb screws or thumb nuts you'd use for switches and stuff, like on ceiling fans. This here, I think, is the antenna leads, because this would have had a plate here with a bunch of screws, and that's gone. So I think I know exactly what that is. I'm not too concerned about that now. Okay, long story short, I'm over here at the museum, and what I did is me and one of my friends, Rajesh, he helped me find this output transformer, and because we're not going to have a field coil, that's being temporarily replaced with this big fat resistor, and I wired everything up, and it works, sort of. So I can bring this up. Of course, that's a chintzy little speaker. But I want to wire this up so I don't forget how it goes back together. Welcome to day 3 working on the Philco, and let me try to reiterate what happened yesterday, because whenever I go to that museum, there's 5,000 million different things happening. At the same time, we're getting ready for Radio Day, which is coming up this Saturday, which won't mean anything to you guys watching this. But anyway, me and my friend Rajesh were able to track down a output transformer. This one has 3 leads. There's 2 leads coming off the plates of the 6F6s, and there's one that's a center tap, which is coming off of B+. So the other thing was that all of the wiring going to that stuff was completely messed up, rotten. I wouldn't trust it. So all of that has been replaced and run out the back. This will connect to our new permanent magnet speaker. I say new, meaning I've got like a 1940s or 50s replacement. This is, and I need to solder it better, is the compensating resistor that will make up for the lack of a field coil, because the field coil was missing, as you remember from when I first started working on this set. And you can put a permanent magnet speaker in these, but you just need to make sure that you have something that will eat up what was going to the field. So that's what that resistor will do. The other thing is that I finally kind of figured out what these wires were back here. They were indeed antenna connections. And these 2 are supposed to go together. What happened is that the main antenna, well, the main radio signal that was going to the volume control had been cut. Probably again because, according to the owner, the dad turned all the radios into a sort of a sound system in the house, so I guess he did not want to have radio signal, bleeding into the audio, so that was cut. I'll probably do a neater job. I'll probably put some new wiring in there. There's some other areas that probably need a little new wiring as well. The other thing I did is I put this on-off switch in here versus that newfangled thing that was in there. This is definitely the volume control. Yesterday, I was able to get it to pick up radio pretty decently. And the other thing I did was I replaced the tubes with all new tubes well, not new tubes, but new old stock tubes that test very well versus the random ones that I threw in there from my stash. What I need to do today, and I started on this yesterday, is I need to replace the rubber grommets that are holding this chassis into place. I need to replace the wiring and the lamp that's going to the pilot lamp, which is not working at the moment. It looks like at some point this got broken. So I'm going to try to do a better job of gluing that back together besides using tape. The shadow meter is not working. It could also just be because the light bulb is burned out. I don't know. And then on top of that, we need to work on the cabinet. The cabinet, which has the wrong grill cloth in it. It's got this ugly black grill cloth. Probably put in about the same time that the other work was done. So I went, and recently we got a donation of a bunch of grill fabrics, and this is vintage grill fabric. This one right here looks pretty promising. I'm just hoping that I can get the wrinkles out. When it's this old, I'm not sure how well the iron's going to work on getting the wrinkles out. If not, I've probably got some generic grill cloth that will work. But before I work on the cabinet, I want to finish up everything that's going on in the chassis. And then I'll feel a little bit more confident about continuing on to the cosmetics. More or less finished up under here. I put my across the line caps in, and I have audio input running. It's hard to see. You've got a pair of resistors running to the top of the volume control, and the other side goes to chassis. You can do that on a set that has a transformer and it has the volume control electrically isolated. Don't do it on a hot chassis or a floating chassis set because it's not that safe. Then you would need to use an isolation transformer. And now what I need to do is rebuild the pilot light. The rubber collar that was here is disintegrated. And this is the tip of the bulb goes here, and then the negative body goes here. So this all needs to be isolated. So I'm going to wire in this new pilot light wire and see if it works, see if the light will come back on. Switching gears a little bit, I did take this plastic dial front off because it was held together with tape. That's what I've done, is I've put little clear pieces of plastic that I got from some packaging on the back and super glued it. It's been taped many times in the front. It looks like you can get reproductions of these. I'll leave it up to the owner whether or not they at some point want to replace it, but maybe not. Kind of its future. I mean, not future, I'm sorry. It's Sunday morning. This is kind of its past. It's a legacy of being an old radio, having been repaired and used for many decades. But taking that off also exposes some components that I can come in here and clean and lubricate. These little detents and also the vernier tuning for the tuning coil, even though it actually turns very easily. I've put new rubber mounts for everything. Homemade rubber mounts anyway. And so this is nice and physically isolated from everything and not wiggling around as much. So let me clean all that up. Alright, so here we are. Everything's fired up. I put an LED for this one because it's brighter. And I also rewired the shutter meter. Now whether the shutter meter works, I don't know. Let's see.
Hi, this is Margie Schaefer from KCBS with great news from Safeway. You can earn Safeway rewards.
Doesn't seem like anyone's home, but then again, I haven't gotten it back in the cabinet yet. Anyway, you got to be careful around these guys. Look what I did yesterday. That right there, can't film my arm because it's at a weird angle. You don't need to see it in detail anyway. I burnt the living crap out of myself off of that. I was leaning over doing something, and I just did that. And at first, I thought I'd hit it on that, and I was like, ow. And then later I got home, I was like, no, that was a freaking burn. So be careful. So now that this is working pretty well now, I am going to start working on the cabinet. Oh, another thing I forgot to do is this. You need to, for the flutter meter, you do need to have this kind of shuttered out, so I need to put that back on top. Alright, it is cabinet time. Now what I did is I laid this down flat on a blanket and took the speaker out, which is most certainly not the original speaker, but that's okay because we're going to replace it with another not original speaker. The speaker panel came out, and then this was just barely glued on. That's good. We can just use this for our template for the grill cloth. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the grill cloth and let it dry while I'm working on the cabinet. I decided to use some of the old grill cloth that I found. What I've done is I've misted it down a little bit because this is old rayon. I'm going to iron it out, and I just don't want to burn it because it'd be very easy this vintage. Alright, I lied. I didn't iron it. What I decided to do instead is, like, it was really dirty, so I cleaned it very gently, and I'm just letting it dry in the sun for a little bit on my decrepit lawn chair that I found in the garbage over a decade ago, and I need to throw away because someone's going to get tetanus if they sit in it. That's why I've been having it sit in the backyard. Well, sitting behind the house where no one's going to sit in it. But I was like, huh. I remember whenever I sat in it, I had to break wind, and I was around guests. People would know about it right away because I forgot. It's a very porous mesh. And I was like, well, that's a great thing for drying out grill fabric. So I set it here in the sun. It's getting dried from the top and above. I just want to see how stainy it looks. I don't think it's going to matter that much because it's not that big of an opening in the grill cloth opening area, or the speaker area. And again, this is going to look a little worn anyway, a little patina. Okay, this is where the cabinet gets cleaned up and rejuvenated. First, I'm going to douse it with Old English, and because I think this does have a little bit of sun damage or UV damage. And also, just go in. It's got some sort of stain and stuff in it, and it'll come in and kind of fill in those little microscopic scratches. You can already see like what a huge difference that's making as far as the coloration. And don't be afraid to apply a ton of this stuff, because again, we're kind of repairing a lot of some of the UV damage. So I'm just going to use a ton of this stuff all over this cabinet to try to bring it back. It is definitely a dry finish. Well, this is after marinating the crap out of this in 3 different things. Howard's, Old English, and then Howard feed and wax, beeswax, and I've been letting that sit in the sun for a little bit. And I can tell by looking at the finish, kind of by feel also, the finish is still there. It's just abraded on the surface from the sun. So I'm going to use my buffer here and some Carnauba wax and buff it out. That was probably about as shiny and clean as it's going to get without a refinish, which Hunter has told me they're okay with. I think it's alright. I mean, given that it's pushing 90, I think it's not too bad looking. Anyway, what I also did is I did cut and size and glue the new / old grill fabric to the board. So now what I'm going to do is lean this over, well, facing the front, so that I can, well, I'm going to put it on basically a towel so that I can reinstall the speaker, and then I'll install the chassis and pray it still works and be done. Let me show you guys a little trick that I use when it comes to when you get your grill cloth on and you realize you have to have holes for the screws. And if you try to drive screws through it without making any holes, you'll just wind up the fabric around the screw and you'll be sorry. So I get my flashlight and you shine it underneath, and you'll see the holes, and you can just use your soldering iron and poke holes with it. Alright, seems like it's working pretty well. Let me disconnect the Bluetooth here.
3209. And if you're one of the first 100...
Networks.com.
You deserve to know the news when the area around the clock. All news.
How vitamin C shields against high blood pressure, heart disease, and stroke. Chapter 6 covers...
played. Meanwhile, in football news in the NFL, All-Star break.
One spot for John Hunter Nemechek. So Ty Gibbs, John Hunter Nemechek, Tyler Reddick,
and Ty Dillon advance. I get the Gibbs and Dillons mixed up. So, did anybody you think have that on their bingo card?
All right, so it's working good. I've been having it play for about an hour here, and so far nothing's blown up or caught on fire or overheated or anything. So it seems like it's in good shape. Let it play here probably for a few more days just to make sure all the bugs are worked out, nothing's bad. The one thing I did do is, first of all, I installed this transformer here. I'm getting just a little bit of hum over the audio, again, because we took the field coil out. And the compensating resistor's right there. I put a little glue over the top of it so no one can touch it. It doesn't really get that warm, so it's not really hurting anything. Again, I'm going to just monitor how this goes. Touch, feel, make sure nothing's getting hot, make sure nothing's burning, make sure it's all going to work reliably. And then this guy can go back to the customer. They live local, so just in case anything bad happens, they can call me up. But I don't want to have to do that, so I just want to make sure that it's fixed here and stays fixed. So anyway, thanks so much for watching this episode of Radio Rama. Until the next time a radio comes across the workbench, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.